Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikachara Stotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Devotee Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Stotra Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shlahadadas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gadanga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, Text 18. Sarva Shraman Upadaya. Sarva Shraman Upadaya. Swashramena Kalatravan. Swashramena Kalatravan. Vyasana Navam Atyeti. Vyasanar Navam Atyeti. Jalayanar Yatar Navam. Jalayanar Yatar Navam. Sarvashraman Upadaya. Swasramena Kalatravan. Vyasanar Navam Atyeti. Jalayanar Yatar Navam. Vaishnavis. Sarva, all. Ashraman, social orders. Upadaya, completing. Swa, own. Ashramena, by the social orders. Kalatravan, a person living with a wife. Vyasana arnavam, the dangerous ocean of material existence. Atyeti, one can cross over. Jalayanai, with sea-going vessels. Yata, as. Arnavam, the ocean. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As one can cross over the ocean with sea-going vessels, one can cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean by living with a wife. Purport. That was Kashyapa Muni speaking. Purport. There are 4 social orders for cooperation in the endeavor for liberation from material existence. The orders of brahmacharya, or pious student life, household life with a wife, retired life, and renounced life all depend for successful advancement on the householder who lives with a wife. This cooperation is essential for the proper functioning of the institution of the 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders of life. The Varnashram system is generally known as the caste system. The man who lives with a wife has a great responsibility in maintaining the members of the other social orders, the brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. Except for the grihastas or the householders, everyone is supposed to engage in spiritual advancement of life. And therefore the brahmachari, the vanaprastha, the sannyasis have very little time to earn a livelihood. They therefore collect alms from the grihastas, and thus they secure the bare necessities of life and cultivate spiritual understanding. By helping the other 3 sections of society cultivate spiritual values, the householder also makes advancement in spiritual life. Ultimately, every member of society automatically becomes spiritually advanced and easily crosses the ocean of nescience. Omagana timiranda shajananjana shalakaya chakshur umilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha shri chaitanya manobishtam stapitam yena bhutale swayam upakadamayam dadati swapadantikam. So this is Kashyapa Muni speaking, and we heard previously, 2 verses ago, that he's not in the best consciousness. Prabhupada said in the purport to number 16, text 16, he said that Kashyapa Muni was already inclined to have sexual enjoyment with his wife, and because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words. So he's in a bit of illusion at this point, Kashyapa Muni. But nevertheless, what he's saying is correct. I mean, it is correct that if one is in the Grihastha ashram, as stated here, and does it properly, then that will enable one to cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean. You know, cross over the ocean of nescience. So he's right about that. But, unfortunately, he's just giving it lip service at this point. He's really just giving that lip service. In other words, he's not doing it. It's ironic, because here he is, he's saying how, yeah, if you follow the Grihastha ashram, it's very important, you'll cross over the ocean of material existence, and he's not following the Grihastha ashram by what he's doing, right? The proper execution of Grihastha ashram is you have to, one thing for sure, you have to observe, there's many things you have to do. One thing is pointed out here, you have to, it's very responsible, you have to maintain the members of the other social orders, that's there. That's one duty or responsibility of somebody in the Grihastha ashram. Another one is you have to observe Garbhadan Samskar. So he's, it's about as far as from Garbhadan Samskar as you could get, what he's doing, you see? So it's kind of, as I said, he's just giving lip service to this, and it's ironic because he's behaving exactly in the opposite way. Prabhupada, I was listening to a lecture last night or the night before, Prabhupada was describing that in the proper Vedic culture, when Varnashram was operating properly, the Garbhadan Samskar was a ceremony, just like a marriage ceremony. And just like, everybody's been to a marriage ceremony, right? It's quite an elaborate ceremony. And then you have, the marriage of the relatives are there, there's a priest there, or somebody, some religious person officiating, and it's a serious thing that people take vows in front of the fire. So Garbhadan Samskar in traditional Vedic culture was a similar sort of a ceremony. It was a big affair. It wasn't just some sort of people, they're married now, whatever they do. No, it wasn't like that. This was like another ceremony. When especially if you're in the Brahmin order, Brahmin caste or Brahmin Varna. Brahmins, especially because Brahmins would be exemplifying ideal human life as far as possible. So when a Brahmin was going to conceive, once again, there'd be invitations sent out to other Brahmins, friends, relatives. They would all come there. There'd be a ceremony. This Brahmin is going to try to conceive with his wife. It's like a marriage ceremony. So that's what's supposed to happen. And that's proper, ideal human life and proper. And if that's not done, then according, on the same lecture, Prabhupada was saying, if somebody doesn't do that, if they don't observe the Garbhadan Samskar, he said immediately they're a Sudra. There's no question of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya. He said if you don't observe Garbhadan Samskar, you're a Sudra. Or lower, depending upon how much you deviate from that. So basically, one thing we get from that is that people today, the human population in the world today, are pretty much Vana Samskar. Vana Samskar means unwanted population. Unwanted population, because not only are people, Vana Shankara, thank you. Vana Shankara. Yeah, unwanted population, because not only are people having sex life at the wrong time, but they're having sex life with the wrong people, in the sense that they're not married. So people are not only having sex life at the wrong time when they're married, but they're having sex life with people they're not even married to. So it's totally in the mode of ignorance, and that disqualifies one from being a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, even a Sudra. You're lucky if when you're breaking principles to that extent, that frequently, you're lucky if could be considered, because the Sudra is still considered within the Varnashram. But whereas you have, there's other races that are outside Varnashram, Panchamas. There's fifth class, Sudras are considered fourth class men, but there's fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. You hear Prabhupada refer to them. So, yeah, to the degree that people don't observe these regulative principles, then they go lower and lower and lower and lower. Even, they're still in human bodies, but you're outside the Vedic system. You're outside the Varnashram's culture. So, so I'm going to read the reference to that this is from a lecture Prabhupada gave in Mumbai about April 1971. He says, when there is sex life, there is a ceremony. It is not a secret thing. They could call, especially for the Brahmins, they would call friends. I'm reading it verbatim, just exactly how Prabhupada said it. Okay? They could call friends, just like Hindu marriage takes place not by agreement, but amongst, and he says, in the presence of Agni and friends and relatives and Brahmins, that is sufficient witness. Similarly, when a Brahmin goes to have sex intercourse for begetting a child, there is a big ceremony. All the relatives, all the learned Brahmins are present, and with their permission, he goes for sex life. What a contrast, huh? To what goes on in the world today. Stark contrast. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, says, those who are not following the principles how to beget child, or not observing the Garbhadan Samskar, according to Shastra, immediately the family becomes converted into Sudra. No more Brahmin, no more Kshatriya, if he does not follow. This is very easy to understand. If you do something illegally against the law, immediately you become a criminal. Similarly, Dharma Viruddha, the Garbhadan Samskar has to be observed. Otherwise, we become Sudra. No more Brahmin, no more Kshatriya. Prabhupada goes, so it is very difficult to say at the present moment whether Garbhadan Samskar is observed. At least in Garbhadan Samskar we understand that this child is born of a real Brahmin, but without Garbhadan Samskar, who knows how the child is born? Nobody knows except the mother. Therefore the Shastra says, in this age, Kali Yuga, because this Garbhadan Samskar is not observed regularly, Kalo Sudra Sambhava. Everybody in this Kali Yuga is a Sudra, because the Garbhadan Samskar is not observed. So that's what I was referring to. Mike.
When you say the Sudra, that's a word. What do you mean by that word? You mean something low, like that's obvious. But can you define?
Yes, well, you know, and the Varnashram system, there's 4 castes, so there's 4 Varnas: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. So Sudra is like the laborer class, and they're predominantly influenced by the mode of ignorance. So,
you're not telling us what makes it bad, what makes it evil, what makes it sinful, okay? You're just saying it's...
okay, well, you're moving further away from Krishna.
We can't just use words, we have to define them so that everybody understands what that means to go that low. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you're moving further away from Krishna. The more you deviate from the Dharma Varudha, you know, the religious principles, you're moving further and further away from Krishna. You're not coming closer to Krishna, you're moving further away from Krishna. So the Brahmins are the Varna that's the closest to Krishna, then the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. So if you don't observe, if you're in the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Varna, and you don't observe this Garbhadan Samskara, anybody doesn't, they're in the mode, they're contacting the mode of ignorance, and that's going to be disadvantageous to them progressing or advancing, using the human form of life for what it's meant to be used for, which is to get closer to Krishna. The word Iso, we have this Isopanishad, you know, I was going to refer to this later in the class. Actually, the Isopanishad means that knowledge that brings one nearer to the Supreme Person, Krishna. So the whole idea is to, you know, conduct your life in such a way that you're going nearer to the Supreme Person, Krishna, not further away. And that's done by following these rules and regulations. You have to, one of them being Garbhadan Samskar. See, it's just like, to give you a crude example, you know, how we become implicated. When I was in Australia, for a couple of years, the type of Sankirtan we were doing, we were selling candles that devotees made, and door to door, and sometimes we would go pub to pub. Okay, a pub is a bar, in case you don't know. And in Australia, it's quite a common thing. You have to, you know, guys get off work, they go to the pub, and they sit around and they drink, and they watch the sports, you know, on TV, and they, you know, smoke. Okay, that's, so when you went into the bar, a lot of times, at least to start off with, I was wearing a sweater, okay? And, you know, we would go and table to table, showing people the candles, trying to sell them. And because everybody's smoking in there, the sweater becomes like full of the smoke. And when you come out, it's kind of like it's stinking with this smoke. And unless, I can't even remember when I put it through the hot wash with soap, if it even came out. Definitely, if you didn't do that, it didn't come out. So the point is, when you engage in sinful activities, you take on a certain quality. It like reduces your capacity. You know, aside from the fact that there's a reaction, but in general, it reduces your capacity to appreciate spiritual life. In that sense, you're moving into darkness, you're not moving into light, okay? So that's why it's not a good idea to not follow these rules and regulations. But getting back to the points here. Okay, so now in the purport here, Prabhupada's talking about these 4 social orders and, you know, the Varnashram system. He does refer to it as such, the Varnashram. In the purport, it says the Vedic Varnashram system is generally known as the caste system. So, Varnashram system is no longer functioning. It's no longer functioning. At least not perfect. Well, it's no longer functioning pretty much altogether. And, you know, devotees are very fond of, you know, mentioning that, well, Prabhupada, right towards the end of his life, he said, you know, only 50% of my work is finished. And the devotees asked him, well, Prabhupada, what do you mean? And he said, well, I want to establish Varnashram. And that's good, you know, but there's more to the conversation. The conversation went on, and they asked, Prabhupada, is that just in general, or do you have some specific plan? And Prabhupada said, specific plan. And they asked him, what is that? And he said, I want to go to Gita Nagari, sit down, and teach you how to live off the land. So that was what Prabhupada said. See, because Varnashram is more than just, you know, that. Varnashram means establishing Brahmin, you know, the four Varnas, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. But apparently Prabhupada, at least when he was making that comment, he was mostly concerned with that aspect of it. That, you know, perhaps he was feeling that the devotees were not doing that great living in the cities, and he thought it'd be helpful for them to live in a rural environment and grow their own food, and etc. Anyway, so that's a point. So, but in general, and even within ISKCON, we're improving. You know, actually we have some farm communities where that's happening, where devotees are learning gradually, or have learned how to grow their own food and be self-sufficient. So that's there. But on the whole, we're not like a perfect Varnashram system. But that's okay. That's okay. Because the real point is this, what's mentioned in the last sentence of the purport. Prabhupada says, ultimately, every member of society has to become spiritually advanced, and then they'll easily cross over the ocean of nescience. See, so Varnashram Dharma is one system for achieving that end. The end being that people become spiritually advanced so they can easily cross the ocean of nescience. So, you know, we're doing that. We're obviously adopting some principles of Varnashram. We're not able to follow it perfectly, but, you know, we're doing it to the best of our ability. And there's other things that we're doing, but on the whole, we're organized in such a way as so the members are facilitated and able to become spiritually advanced and easily cross over the ocean of nescience. And to be honest with you, this temple is an example of that. This temple we're not like a perfect Varnashram community, but we're doing what's necessary. We're doing the essential, which is that we're organized in such a way that things are focused on practicing Krishna consciousness and spreading it, getting it out there to other people. You know, we have businesses that are preaching in and of themselves and also support book distribution. So this is an example, you know, of Varnashram. I don't know how you refer to it, Daivi Varnashram or whatever. It's a sort of a hybrid of the classical Varnashram and Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. But the bottom line is that what's supposed to happen is happening. There's an opportunity here for people to come and participate in become spiritually advanced themselves and push on the Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada said in one purport in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam on this point, he says, Kriyashu means by manual labor, by work. It is important in this verse. One should engage in practical service to the Lord. In our Krishna consciousness movement, all our activities are concentrated. This is the point, practical service to the Lord. We might not be able to follow the Varnashram system exactly. We're not able to do that, but it's okay. But what has to happen is you have to be engaged, have an opportunity and be engaged in practical service to the Lord. So Prabhupada goes on, says, in our Krishna conscious movement, all our activities are concentrated upon distributing Krishna literature. This is very important. One may approach any person to induce him to read Krishna literature so that in the future he may become a devotee. Okay, so the point is that, yeah, Prabhupada's saying it, and we're doing that here. You know, it's not like, but it's a team effort. It's a team effort. You know, there's people who actually go out and distribute the books, concentrating on, distributing Krishna literature, but we're supported. You know, we're supported by pujaris who are doing such a wonderful job, addressing the deities, serving the deities, and it's very, it's enlivening, by cooks who are preparing prasadam, by managers who have arranged spiritual slash preaching businesses that support book distribution. So it's like a Daivivan ashram, in the sense that the ultimate objective is being accomplished, it's being achieved, which is that members of the society are being given the opportunity and are taking advantage of it and are becoming spiritually advanced. That's what's going on. So that's important. And in order for that to happen, in a communal level, it has to happen for each one of us on an individual level. And I mentioned how I was going to. I don't know how exactly I got into it, but I think I was just chanting my japa, and for some reason the thought entered my mind that I should get Isopanishad, and I remember there was some mantra in Isopanishad that I needed to read, and I think Krishna was just guiding me, and I just went to the last mantra, and sure enough, that was what I was looking for. The last 4 mantras of Isopanishad. By the way, this is a very important book, Isopanishad. Very important book. It's actually, I think you could say, more basic even than Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada would refer to Bhagavad Gita as like the ABC. I don't know. Isopanishad is even more basic, but it's important. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because Prabhupada, when he was here in Los Angeles in 1970, gave classes on the Isopanishad for 1 straight month. And what he did was every morning he had the devotees chant some mantras. Like sometimes the whole Isopanishad, but sometimes just like 5 or 6 mantras, and then he'd give a class on one particular verse, and he worked his way right through the Isopanishad. That was way back in the early days. And so obviously Prabhupada thought it was an important book. So the last 4, there's 18 mantras in the Isopanishad, the last 4 are prayers, and this is the last prayer. And this is mantra 18, and this is which is the last mantra. And this is a prayer. I don't know who's the author of this. I mean, the author is obviously Srila Vyasadeva, but who exactly is speaking this prayer? But it's very very important. It goes, Agne Naya Supata Raye Asman Vishvani Deva Vayunani Vidvan. Yuyod hi asmaj juhuranam eno buyistam te nama uktim videma. And the translation is, O my Lord, as powerful as fire, O omnipotent one, now I offer you all obeisances, falling on the ground at your feet. O my Lord, please lead me on the right path to reach you. And since you know all that I have done in the past, please free me from reactions to my past sins, so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. And so, as I said, I just felt like I was just kind of directed to this mantra, and when I read it, I thought, wow, I can really resonate, really relate to this prayer, that's being offered here by some devotee in the Isopanishad. Particularly this point of, please lead me on the right path to you. We should, devotee has to have that desire. We have to be desiring that. We have to be praying to Krishna, please lead me on the right path to you. And also, there's two requests here that are being expressed by the devotee who's offering this prayer. One is that please lead me on the right path to you. And the other is that please free me from the reactions to my past sins, so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. You see? So if individually we're cultivating this type of a mentality, we're praying like this, then, it's going to be successful. I mean, that's going to help us in our spiritual life, and we're going to be able to participate in the community in such a way that, as it says here, that every member will become spiritually advanced and will easily cross over the ocean of nations. So this is an important thing. And interestingly enough, in the purport, Prabhupada, in elaborating upon this, Prabhupada refers to Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, text 17 through 21, which start off with Srinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya, those famous verses. Prabhupada actually quotes them in the purport to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1. I'm not going to quote them now. But I found that interesting because, Prabhupada was sort of referring to that as being the process for achieving what this devotee is praying for. Them getting absorbed in the hearing and chanting about Krishna. And he doesn't talk about Varnashram, he talks about this, process of hearing and chanting about Krishna. And so that's what's, that's our program. That's our program. We have to desire like this. We have to desire, Krishna, please lead me on the right path to you. Please free me from reactions to my past sins so that there won't be any impediment to my, going there. And Prabhupada, in the purport, he explains what the process is. The process is the hearing and chanting about Krishna, what we're doing here every day. We from 4:30 in the morning, officially from 4:30 in the morning till 8:30 in the morning. We're 4 hours of hearing and chanting, and then more throughout the day if we do this, then and we stick with it, then eventually, here's what's going to happen. This is from the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Here's a description of what eventually happens to a devotee who is very, sincere and dedicates themselves to this program. Prabhupada says, the pure devotee is 100% engaged in Krishna's service, and the Lord puts him in trance by which he can realize everything. He puts him in trance by which he can realize everything. Because to the sincere devotee of the Lord reveals himself, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. The Lord being the Lord of intelligence in everyone, even the non-devotee, Prabhupada says, favors his devotee with proper intelligence so that automatically the pure devotee is enlightened with the factual truth about the Lord and his different energies. The Lord is revealed not by one's speculative power or by one's verbal jugglery over the absolute truth. Rather, he reveals himself to a devotee when he is fully satisfied by the devotee's service attitude. Okay, so that's it. If we're just sincere about doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing here, then eventually this is what's going to happen. Krishna's going to reveal himself to us who are being fully satisfied by our sincere service attitude. And Prabhupada, in the next verse, he kind of emphasizes this point even more. He refers to this as the awakening of knowledge. And he says about this awakening of knowledge, he says, this awakening of knowledge is under the full control of the Lord. So in other words, there's no other process, there's no other program for understanding Krishna. Krishna has to reveal himself to you, and he's going to reveal himself to you, or us, to me as well, when he's satisfied, as it says here, when he's satisfied by our service attitude. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question? Archie.
Thanks for a really nice class, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Maharaj's question in the middle of your presentation about the definition of a sutra. So this is given in the 18th chapter. And yes, we should know them. Beginning with 1842 describes the Brahmana, Shamoda Maktamas, like that. And then 43 describes the Kshatriya, Kshoryam Teja Driti Daksha. Then 44 defines both the Vaishya and the Shudra. Famous verse, Krishi Goraksha Vanijam. That's the Vaishya, cow protection, farming, and business. And then the third line, Paricharyatmakam Karma Shudrasyapi Sabhavaja. So what is it? Paricharya means service. Karma means by means of, consisting of. So that's what a Shudra does. A Shudra is a person who serves others. The Brahmanas are very proud of not serving others. They, make their own way in life, and similarly the Kshatriyas. But as you pointed out in the beginning of your class, they may be proud of that they're not serving others, but if they don't observe Garbhadang Sanskar, then they're immediately considered Shudras. They may be, functioning externally as a Brahmana, lighting fires and throwing water and this and that, but if they have not observed Garbhadang Sanskar, then they're immediately classified as Shudras, which means, again, Shudra means Paricharyamakam Karma. You're serving others for your living. That's what a Shudra is, a person who serves others for their living. It's not about being evil or this or that. It's that you serve others. A Brahmana is never supposed to take service. If they can't live as a Brahmana, make a living, then they are allowed to come down and be a Kshatriya. Which means, again, you have to be bold in battle, and you're allowed to tax like that. That's the Kshatriya's living. So we have the example of Dronacharya. He was a Brahmana by nature and by training, but he came down to the next level, the Kshatriya level, to train the royal princes how to fight, etc., etc. So he was making his living that way, not directly as a Brahmana. But a Brahmana or a Kshatriya, or even a Vaishya, should never take service from others for pay, directly or indirectly. That's what a Shudra is. So if you have that mentality, I go to school, I get a degree, and I'm very proud of having a PhD or whatever, but my real business is going door to door, knocking, please employ me properly. Say, that's the dog's business. Please employ me, feed me, that's dog. So that's why the Shudras are in the 4th class, because they have to depend on the higher 3 classes.
All right, thank you. Nice clarification. Vivijanath? Oh, question or comment? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to elaborate the point that I asked you to elaborate on. That was on the word Shudra. Is only a word, and to persons who don't know exactly what it really means in terms of activity, in terms of interaction, then it's only a word. So what I was trying to bring out is that when Prabhupada is mentioning the word Shudra, he's mentioning this a whole different style of life. One is concerned more with the satisfaction of his senses, of his ego, of his mind, of just his little body. He's concerned totally with that. But the main thing is he becomes gradually attracted to and addicted to various kinds of sense gratification, so that they take up so much of his time that he has no time for philosophical or spiritual activity. And that can happen, as we see in the story of Ajamil. Ajamil was a perfect Brahmin at one point, but then he got involved with this prostitute, and as a result of that involvement, he became more and more attached to her, more attracted to her, more interested in her, and to such an extent that he couldn't leave her. And even when he was at his very old age, he was still thinking in those terms. He couldn't get rid. So the point is this, is a Shudra is a person who can't think of anything except his sense pleasure. That's all he wants. Me, 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 I. Where can I get my next fix? That's their idea. Whereas the devotee is thinking, where can I get my next opportunity to serve, to love, to adore, to give to Krishna? Basically, that's the difference. So you go from that high position of giving, adoring, surrendering, to the other, to wanting everything for oneself and forget everybody else. That's it. That's all I want.
We're Vivijanath, and then I guess we'll wrap it up.
Yes, you mentioned, Prabhupada said 50% of what he wants to do is for an ashrama, but do you have a reference for that? Because I can never find that statement. And other devotees have been talking about it, and they can never give a reference for it either. It'd just be nice to...
Okay, I'll have to research it. I mean, I've heard it dozens of times, but I can't remember if I ever saw it in print, but I'll try to find it on the database for you and get back to you. Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.